use Cockney. Push harder for fuck's sake, can't you? I was sick and perched on the edge of my chair, and as my guts went into spasm, I fought to keep down the rising tide of vomit that threatened to engulf me at any moment. 10 days without a decent hit, and now this. Shout out for Christ's sake, you sound like a fucking midwife. You're putting me off and it's just going deeper inside. Dodgy Dave was crouched in the middle of the floor, his pants around his ankles and an old copy of The Sun, that's a Rupert Murdoch paper, an old copy of The Sun spread out beneath him. After one of the longest droughts in living memory, that had seen all the local dealers out desperately trampling the streets, Dave had finally managed to score a few grams. The only problem was that he'd suffered an attack of the jitters and had hidden it so far up his own arse that he was now having severe problems finding it again. Look, it must be in there somewhere. It can't have disappeared completely. Can't you find it with your fingers? That's all right for you to say, you callous cunt. I've had the shits for a week and the arse is like a baboon's. Could get me old fist up there and still not find it. Normally, I'd have had enough methadone to see me through times like this, but Sissy and I had another of our increasingly frequent rows, and she disappeared with 300 mils of done and about half our float. Never mind that it was, in theory, her money. I couldn't believe her treachery, but I was ready to kill her when she eventually showed up. Maybe you should have a rest for a few minutes, take a cigarette break, then try again. Your muscles are obviously spasming and going into reverse. So if you just relax for a while, they start working normally again. The bag will come out by itself. Dave had the reputation of being a bit of a hard case. I didn't want to get him riled. How the fuck can I relax with you sitting there like a cunt and me bollock naked with 3 grams of smack up my arse? I'm sicker than you are. At least you had a little bit to keep you going for a while. The spider's web tattoo that covered the right side of Dave's neck was throbbing with indignation, or maybe with the effort of trying to force out that stubborn little package that had lodged itself somewhere in the lower reaches of his small intestine. He used to shoot up in the middle of this tattoo, right in the jugular, where he couldn't raise a vein in his arms, hands or feet, and reckoned it gave him a better, faster rush than anywhere else. Why'd you stick it up your arse anyway? Couldn't you just have put it in your sock or down your pants like any normal person? I mean, if the old Bill Rontian took you down the nick, that's the first place they'd look. I was reaching a crisis point of anxiety and impatience, and I thought for a moment that I might have pushed Dave too far. With no endorphins left in my system to cushion the pain, and no smack either, each movement was an effort. My bones grated in their sockets, my diaphragm pushed in upon my lungs, and every nerve in my body was irritated and tortured to the point where I felt like screaming. But I also knew I had to tread carefully. Even though it was my money he had used to cop with, Dave was in no mood to be pressured or hustled. As he said, he was probably even sicker than I was, and though we'd both been out hunting all day with the sweat pouring off us and our skins crawling with the chills of withdrawal, it was he who had been successful and had eventually managed to score. He stood up looking very pissed off, and for a minute I thought he might walk out on me with a smack still up his arse. Suddenly his expression changed. Hang on a minute. I felt something move inside me. I think it's coming out. Standing up then must have dislodged it, or else my guts are starting to work again. That's funny. Didn't think there was anything left up there to shit out. Dave hopped back to his copy of The Sun and squatted down again. Puffing and grunting with his face almost purple from the effort, he suddenly let out an almighty fart, and with it a horrible stinking mess of watery diarrhea spattered onto the newspaper. The stench was truly disgusting. This timely and heaven-sent bowel movement had done the trick. Wiping his backside on a rancid old towel that was lying around, and with his face contorted in pain, Dave probed and prodded until his questing fingers finally locked around the elusive little package that had caused him so much anguish. Fucking A, party time at last! He held the small round bag aloft in victory. It was tightly wrapped in cling film, and as far as I could tell had not been impregnated by the foul-smelling discharge. Dave was rumoured to be HIV positive, and I wasn't too happy about the gear having been stuffed up his backside in the first place. But as far as I knew, the virus could only be passed via blood or semen, and was not able to travel through plastic, even when the plastic had been wedged far inside the carrier's arsehole. Besides, David already cleaned and sliced open the package with a razor blade and was carefully measuring out a dose into his spoon. With the stuff right there on the table in front of me, and with cold, sickly sweat breaking out from every pore in my body, I was willing to take my chances. I've been sharing needles and having unprotected sex for years, both in New York and London, long before anyone knew anything about AIDS, and when it was still referred to as gay cancer. Though the frequent TV warnings and documentaries were making me increasingly nervous, I reckoned that this was a fairly safe bet compared to the multifarious ways I'd already abused my body over the previous 10 years. The sense of anticipation a sick junkie feels as he cocks up his shot is almost impossible to describe. Maybe it is comparable to the sensation of a man dying of thirst in the desert fields as he crawls up that final sand dune and unexpectedly sees water shimmering in the distance, a cool and welcoming oasis. Or to the way a convict on death row might feel, suddenly and inexplicably pardoned and transported to a hotel room where the most beautifully and sexually adept whore in the world waits to satisfy his every perverse fantasy and need. But not really. To the person who's never been in this state, no words can truly convey the sense of expectation, the knowledge that within seconds all the pain and physical suffering will magically evaporate like a dank river mist at sunrise. Your body, taken off the rack at last, will find itself instead floating in warm and protective amniotic waters, while your mind, tortured for days by darkness, gloom and ugly twisted dreams, will suddenly be immune and inviolate, free from all anxiety and violent self-loathing. Artificial paradise it may well be, but in another sense it's as real gets. As I cooked up my own shot, my trembling hands became sure and precise, and I heated the spoon from below without spilling a drop. My clothes and body stank, and I was aware of the rancid discharge from my cock that was soiling the inside of my underwear. For when you're kicking, the genitals become hypersensitive and you tend to shoot off spontaneously without warning, just for the pressure of your clothes against your skin. Even the air itself seems to hurt. You truly cannot stand any kind of contact upon your body at all, while friction of even the slightest and most innocuous kind is enough to send you into a shivering, quivering mass of jangled nerve endings and twitching flesh, as if plagues of insects were crawling about under your cold, clammy skin. But all these symptoms vanish once the smack is in your veins, and you are suddenly flooded with a holy and transforming inner light. The decaying, stinking carcass that you've been forced to inhabit for days is suddenly charged with a marvellous energy, and you are awash with optimism and ideas and vague but pleasant dreams of the future. You wash the stench from your body and clothes, while the poisonous, cloying dredge in your mind is flushed out, purified by that brief alchemical glow that is King Heroin's gift to even his most abject disciples. I stuck the needle in, drew up the blood, booted it, and repeated the procedure before following Dave into the land of Nod, the smackhead's reward for all the pain, suffering and humiliation that is an essential part of his chosen way of life. For several hours I passed in and out of dreams, losing all sense of place and time, and when I finally came to, Dave was gone. So I duly noticed was most of the remaining year. He'd obviously felt that his traumatised anus entitled him to an extra dram or two, and had helped himself, probably feeling perfectly justified in doing so. And though I briefly flirted with the idea of taking a baseball bat and going to look for the cunt, I soon shelved it. I figured he was much harder than me. Anyway, by the time I found him, the smack would be long gone. Instead, I cooked up what was left of the gear and shot it into my arm, recognising as I did that whichever way I looked at the situation, it was now impossible to deny that I was well and truly fucked.